Class, let's revisit our barbecue grill manufacturer and let's look for some additional insights and think our way through some other scenarios that are out there. So one of the things that we did not calculate previously was our profit percentage. So I'm going to call this our profit percentage of revenue. Okay, and that's a pretty straightforward calculation. So it's just this number right here divided by my total revenue. And I'm going to format this as a percentage. And I don't want a bunch of decimal places. In fact, I'm going to get rid of all of them. Just keep this nice big round numbers. So if my production quantity was about 150, my profit margin's only about 19%. If I'm at 100, that's that break-even point we looked at previously. I'm at 0%. As I get up to around 200 grills, I'm at about 28%. And this is something that a lot of people new to business don't realize quite what kind of numbers we're looking for here. So we're assuming that some of this profitability, this net revenue as a percentage of revenue, needs to be a fairly robust number, because this is where the dollars come from for your next investment. So if you believe your company is going to be in a growth mode, you need to be higher than 20% in this arena. 28% would be very healthy and in really good shape. This particular model is probably a little on the unrealistic side. The idea that at 350 production quantity, I'm at 40% revenue, that would be a very optimistic type of a number for a business. But seeing a number between 22 and 28% would be both exciting and realistic. A lot of folks don't realize that is where a lot of businesses operate. Now, so that's my percent of revenue. Let's also add another constraint in here. So we said earlier we have fixed cost of $50,000 for tooling. I'm going to claim that we have an incremental fixed cost, okay? Okay, and I'm going to claim that we incur this after we create 200 grills, okay? So once we've made 200 grills, some of my tooling is worn out, and I need to spend an additional $25,000. To refurbish my grill, okay? So this production cost column is now going to change. I didn't do something I intended to do. So sometimes you guys get to learn from my mistakes. So you see I named this tab Chapter 2, Exercise 2, Example, Part 1. So I'm going to actually right-click on that. I'm going to click Move or Copy. I'm going to click on the copy, move to end, click OK. And then I'm going to right-click again. I'm going to click Rename. And I'm going to call this Part 2. It was my intent not to start typing until I did that, so that I could keep on this first tab all the results that I had on the first tab, including the graph, looking just like it does. And over here, have a different graph, different set of outcomes, because they could also get complicated. Now, in order to make some room for this, I'm going to move our graph over a few columns. Still be able to see it. Okay, there's our graph. Okay, now I'm not going to revise this prod cost. I am simply going to add an additional one here that is revised prod cost. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to add this column, and I now have a revised prod cost that I'm going to populate in here. We'll put the other scalar here. So I claim this 25,000 will happen after we hit 200 grills. This will make it a little bit easier to refer to this. Sorry, copying some formatting there in just a moment. So what I want, if I hit my F2, it'll open this box up. I can highlight everything I did before. I can drop it in there. I'm going to format this again for accounting. I don't need the decimal places, and there it is. Now what I want to add is an if-then statement. So if this number of production over here is greater than or equal to this recapitalization constraint, Then I want to add in the 25,000. And if not, I want to add in 0. Okay, so there it is. I need to also, I don't want this test to slide down, so I need to lock this one into row 15. I need to lock this one into row 14. Now I'm simply going to copy and paste. And there it is. Okay. So looking down through here with the eyeballs, yep, I was at 120,000. It matched. But as soon as I hit that 200th grill, oh, looky here. Now my revised production cost jumps up significantly, and it's different than it was previously. So let's see what we can learn here. Let's go back to our chart. We're going to select data again. We're going to add another descriptor. In this case, the series name is that rev prod cost. And our series values are these. Whoops. Did something funny there. There they are. And I'm going to click OK. Click OK again. There we go. Now, we're going to play with these numbers a little bit before we go on, because you can see something interesting happening here on the graph. Okay. Now, what if we learned something disturbing, that after 200 grills, my recapitalization cost was as high as original, and I said it was 50,000. The line ends up intersecting a second time. We end up with a situation where after 200 grills, it looks like we have become profitable for a period of time, and then suddenly, right around the 200 grill mark, we go back to a 0 again. This is not all that uncommon in business modeling, where you learn that, hey, this is not going to take off and run the way that I was hopeful that this would take off and run. So that would be a disturbing thing to learn in the business, right? So one of the things that we can now do also is we can add to this chart, if we're kind of curious about it, just thinking through things. We could create this profit percent of revenue. We could create a column right over here that actually does this, and we could tie that off and put another curve up here. We may find out that, hey, as we go into the business, our original assumption was it was 50,000 to start. What if it was 75,000, and after 200 grills, it cost 50,000 to recapitalize? This business is not looking so attractive anymore. So now all of a sudden we're not real happy about the results. But I'm going to put this back at the 50,000. I'm going to claim this as an incremental of 25,000. Let's say that we hired a continuous improvement engineer to work for us who was able to improve this, and we don't have to pay that 225,000 until we got to 250 grills. That changes the shape of our curve again and pushes this out and gives us a little bit more breathing room. Now, right in here at that 250, what if we said that's where we set our target? Well, right at that spot, we're at 33% profitability, and our profit's 75,000. What if instead I stopped at 225? Well, we're nearly as profitable and pretty close on the money. It's kind of interesting. What if I said we did 240? Wow. So you can end up with things that are not truly linear in business models. And we may end up having constraints where, hey, if we can't get to a certain profit margin, we're not interested in entering the business. So this is just another piece that you should look at and play with and take a look at, hey, what could this chart end up looking like over a longer period of time? Now, I didn't lay it out very well for this, but what if we chased this further and we said, you know what, I'm going to add on to the size of my business, and I could potentially go to 500 grills, okay? Change this back where this recapitalization is at 200 grills. But also something I learned is, I'm going to add a few rows in here. I'm using the old command because I know the old quick keys. I'm using insert row. What if we have another incremental fixed cost after 350 grills? And let's say this time, this incremental cost is not quite as much, but it's 20,000. And it happens after 350 grills. You know, what does that do to us? What does that particular incremental cost end up looking like? And what does our net revenue end up looking like? Okay, so I'm just going to keep chasing this mentality and think through this, because I'm going to want you to build a spreadsheet, and I'm doing this very intentionally. I'm going to have you build a spreadsheet like this, that you change something, you look at it, you think about it, you add some commentary, you change something else, you look at it, you think about it. This is an important skill to develop. This is the difference between learning the syntax of Excel and learning to look at Excel as a tool that is highly flexible and learning to craft your Excel. So this is my second rev prod cost, okay? And in this case, again, to save myself on some typing, I'm just going to copy the prior one, okay, and drop it over here. Now, some of y'all have already picked up on something that I could be doing in this case. So I could do that and add to this formula, which I believe is a good practice. I think maybe even a better practice, since I'm building one onto the other, is the idea that this secondary rev prod cost, I know I'm just creating another threshold. So I'm just going to say that it's going to be this one plus another if-then statement, right? So if this production volume is again greater than or equal to this incremental threshold, I'm going to add this additional $20,000. And if not, I'm going to add 0. Okay. I'm going to fix a couple of formats here. I'm going to format this as accounting as well. Do that one as accounting. I'm going to scroll this down. Whoops. Anybody catch the mistake that I made? Here's what it is. I didn't anchor my row in place. So my formula propagated down the page, okay? So now I've got that in there. Let's see if it looks like it worked. So, yep. So it matches up through 325, and all of a sudden at 350, we've got this drop down anomaly taking place, okay? So this time I'm going to go back to my chart. I'm going to right click. I'm going to select data again. I'm going to add another legend entry. This series name is the second one. The series values are these right here. And I'm going to click OK. Now, one of the things that I would need to do to make all this work the way that I want to is this sales revenue. I'm going to need to edit it and recognize that this now extends through all of this, okay? Whoopsie daisies. All the way through all of that. I'm going to click OK. Okay? And I'm not that worried about extending the other lines because I'm most interested in this new line that I've created, okay? So I'm just going to say that that's good enough for now. Click OK. And you can see some interesting anomalies here. And what you can see is you have profit compression when you recapitalize. Then you have profit expansion, and then you have a little bit of profit compression again when you recapitalize. So now what I want to see, I'm interested now in charting my revenue on this same chart against just those two pieces, those last two. So this is my net profit, okay? So in this case, it's my sales revenue minus this second revenue, this second production cost, revised production cost, okay? So down here, it doesn't look good at all. And then it climbs. And you can see, we knew this already, that until we hit 100, this is where our break even is. So now I'm going to come back to my chart one more time. And I am going to select data again. I'm going to add another legend entry. In this case, the series name is this net profit. And the series values are these here. Okay. Now, because this includes a negative, it's going to do some funny stuff to my chart. I'm going to click OK. Click OK again. And you can see my net profits here. they climb, and then they actually go backwards in that recapitalization period. And this longer curve is caused because the granularity of our production data is in 20 units at 25. Then it climbs again, and then it goes backwards again. This is very typical of a business having to recapitalize certain things. So this is something you're going to get in your homework assignment. I'm going to want you to play with a business model, build a cluster of curves like this, add additional lines in here. I'm going to have you add commentary. I'm going to ask some questions about what you were seeing in terms of interpreting the data you're seeing. And this is a pretty important discipline for folks to get their arms around as you develop your Excel crafting skills.